The rejection letter came on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a drone that did not even wait for her signature. Maya Chen stood in the doorway of her family's small repair shop on the outer ring of Station Kepler 7, reading the words 3 times before they made sense. The United Galactic Military Academy regretted to inform her that her application had been unsuccessful. They wished her well in her future endeavors. She was 17 years old. She had spent 4 years preparing for this moment. She had studied navigation, weapons systems, tactical theory, and xenobiology. She had trained her body until she could run 10 kilometers without stopping and her mind until she could solve complex equations while exhausted. None of it mattered. The Academy accepted only 300 students each year from across 12 star systems, and Maya Chen, from the outer ring of a mining station, was not one of them. Her mother found her that evening, still sitting in the same chair. The letter crumpled in her hands. Her mother did not say anything. She simply sat down beside her daughter and waited. "I was good enough," Maya said finally. "My scores were high enough. I know they were." Her mother nodded slowly. Sometimes being good enough is not what matters. Maya understood what she meant. The Academy had quotas to fill. Children of admirals and senators needed spots. Children of wealthy donors needed spots. Children from the outer rings of mining stations, whose parents ran repair shops and whose grandparents had been indentured workers, did not need spots. There were always more of them than there were places. "What am I supposed to do now?" Maya asked. Her mother took her hand. "You find another way." That conversation would echo through the next 60 years of human history. Maya Chen did find another way, though it was nothing like what either of them imagined that evening. She did not become a soldier or an officer or a decorated war hero. She never wore a uniform or commanded a fleet. Her name never appeared in any official military record. And yet, when the war came, when humanity faced extinction at the hands of an enemy they did not understand, it was Maya Chen who turned the tide. Not through strength or strategy or superior firepower, but through something the Academy never taught and the military never valued. But that was decades away. First, she had to survive the rejection. First, she had to build a life from the ruins of her dreams. The repair shop specialized in mining equipment. Kepler 7 was a resource extraction station, one of hundreds scattered across the outer territories where humanity had expanded after the discovery of faster-than-light travel. The station orbited a gas giant rich in helium-3 and rare earth elements, materials essential for the fusion reactors that powered human civilization. Thousands of workers lived on the station, and their equipment broke down constantly. The Chen family repair shop had operated for 3 generations, passed down from Maya's grandfather, who had arrived as a debt worker and eventually bought his freedom through careful saving and relentless labor. Maya had always assumed she would leave this life behind. The Academy would take her to Earth, to the gleaming towers of the capital city, to a future among the stars. Instead, she found herself standing behind the counter of the shop the day after her rejection, helping customers with broken drill bits and malfunctioning atmospheric processors. Her father tried to comfort her. "The shop is a good life," he said. "Honest work. You help people." Maya nodded and said nothing. She did not want to hurt him by saying what she really felt, which was that she was suffocating. The station felt smaller every day, its corridors narrower, its recycled air staler. She watched ships depart through the viewing windows and felt something inside her chest tighten every time. 3 months after her rejection, something happened that would change everything. A cargo ship called the Wandering Star arrived at the station with engine trouble. This was not unusual. Ships arrived at Kepler 7 with engine trouble frequently, and the Chen family shop often received overflow work from the main docking facilities. What was unusual was the ship itself. The Wandering Star was not a mining vessel or a transport ship. It was a free trader, one of the independent ships that moved between star systems carrying cargo too valuable or too sensitive for the major shipping companies. Free traders existed in a gray area of galactic law. Not quite pirates, but not quite legitimate merchants either. They went places corporate ships would not go, and did things corporate crews would not do. The captain of the Wandering Star was a woman named Helena Cross. She was perhaps 50 years old, with silver hair cut short and a scar that ran from her left eyebrow to her jaw. She walked into the repair shop on the second day of her ship's stay and asked to speak with whoever had fixed her navigation computer. Maya's father pointed to Maya. Helena Cross studied her for a long moment. How old are you? 17, Maya said. Where did you learn to reroute a navigation system through backup processors? Maya shrugged. I read the technical manuals. It seemed logical. Helena Cross laughed, a short bark of sound. The logical solution would have taken my engineer 3 days to implement. You did it in 6 hours. I did not have 3 days' worth of parts, Maya said. I had to work with what was available. Something shifted in Helena Cross's expression. She pulled up a chair and sat down across from Maya, ignoring the other customers waiting in the shop. You applied to the academy. I can see it in your eyes. Maya stiffened. How do you know that? Because I applied too, 30 years ago. Same look, same hunger, same rejection. Helena Cross leaned forward. What are you going to do now? Spend the rest of your life fixing mining equipment? I do not have other options, Maya said. Everyone has options. Some are just harder to see. Helena Cross reached into her pocket and pulled out a small card. The Wandering Star needs a new engineer. Our last one retired on Proxima Station. The pay is not great, the work is hard, and half the systems on the ship are held together with hope and improvisation. But you would see the galaxy. You would learn things no academy could teach you. Maya looked at the card. It had a communication frequency and nothing else. Think about it, Helena Cross said. We leave in 2 days. Maya did think about it. She thought about it for 47 hours, during which she barely slept. Her parents argued about it in hushed voices they thought she could not hear. Her father was afraid. Her mother was something else, something Maya could not quite identify. On the morning of the second day, Maya packed a small bag and walked to the docking bay where the Wandering Star was berthed. Helena Cross was waiting at the airlock. She did not seem surprised to see Maya. Your parents know you are here? Yes, Maya said. They are not happy. Parents rarely are. Helena Cross stepped aside to let her board. Welcome to the Wandering Star, Maya Chen. Your education begins now. The free trader life was nothing like Maya had imagined. It was harder, dirtier, and more dangerous. It was also the most alive she had ever felt. The Wandering Star traveled to places that did not appear on official navigation charts. They visited stations that had declared independence from the United Galactic Government, colonies that had been abandoned and then resettled by people who wanted to disappear, and worlds that humanity had barely begun to explore. They carried cargo that ranged from medical supplies to ancient artifacts to things Maya was not allowed to ask about. Helena Cross taught her everything. Not just engineering. Though Maya learned more about starship systems in her first year aboard the Wandering Star than she would have learned in 4 years at the academy. Helena taught her how to read people, how to negotiate, how to recognize danger before it arrived. She taught her how to fight, both with weapons and without. She taught her how to survive. The academy trained soldiers, Helena said one night, as they sat in the Wandering Star's small common room, sharing a bottle of something that burned going down. They trained them to follow orders, to operate within systems, to be parts of a machine. That is useful in some situations. In others, it will get you killed. What do you train? Maya asked. Helena smiled. Survivors, adapters, people who can think when everything is falling apart. Maya thought about this often over the following years. She thought about it when they were ambushed by pirates in the Tau Ceti system and had to fight their way free with a ship held together by emergency welds and desperate repairs. She thought about it when a plague swept through a station they were visiting and Maya spent 3 weeks helping the local doctors because she had learned field medicine from a former military medic who served on the Wandering Star for 2 years. She thought about it when they discovered an abandoned alien artifact drifting in deep space. Something beautiful and terrifying that no human had ever seen before. The galaxy was vast and strange and full of wonders. Maya drank it in like water after a drought. She also began to notice things. Patterns in the shipping routes, in the movements of military vessels, in the way certain stations were being fortified and others were being quietly evacuated. Helena noticed her noticing and said nothing, which told Maya that she saw it too. Something was coming, something big, and the official channels, the military, the government, they either did not see it or did not want to talk about it. Maya was 23 when they first encountered the Silence. The Silence was not their real name. No one knew their real name, or if they even had one. They were called the Silence because that was what remained after they passed through a system. Silence, emptiness, death. The first confirmed contact happened near the edge of explored space, at a research station studying unusual energy readings from a nearby nebula. The station sent a distress call that lasted 11 seconds before cutting off. When rescue ships arrived, they found the station intact but completely empty. No bodies. No signs of struggle, just emptiness, as if everyone aboard had simply vanished. At first, the authorities called it an accident, some kind of malfunction. Then it happened again, at a mining colony 2 systems away. Then again, at a military outpost. Then at a civilian transport carrying 400 passengers. By the time the government acknowledged that humanity was under attack, the enemy had already taken a dozen systems. Maya and the crew of the Wandering Star were in the Epsilon Eridani system when the official announcements came. They watched the broadcasts in grim silence, Helena's face pale in the light of the screen. "This is what you saw," Maya said. "In the patterns, the evacuations, the fortifications." Helena nodded slowly. "I hoped I was wrong. What do we do now?" Helena turned to look at her, and Maya saw something in her captain's eyes that she had never seen before. Fear. Real, genuine fear. "I do not know," Helena said. "I honestly do not know." The war had begun, and humanity was losing. The silence were unlike any enemy humanity had faced before. They did not negotiate, did not communicate, did not respond to any attempts at contact. They appeared without warning from regions of space that should have been empty and swept through human settlements like a cold wind. Their technology was centuries beyond anything humanity possessed. Their ships could not be tracked on conventional sensors. Their weapons could not be stopped by conventional shields. Humanity fought back with everything it had. The United Galactic Military deployed its fleets, its armies, its best officers and most advanced weapons. They won occasional victories, small skirmishes where they managed to destroy a silent ship or drive back an attack. But for every victory, there were a dozen defeats. The silence did not conquer, they erased. Every system they took fell into darkness. Every person who lived there vanished without a trace. The Academy graduates commanded fleets. They followed their training, executed their strategies, fought with honor and courage. They died by the thousands, and the silence kept coming. Maya spent those years on the fringes of the war, doing what free traders did. She carried refugees from falling systems to safer harbors. She smuggled medical supplies past blockades. She gathered information from sources the military could not reach and passed it to anyone who might use it. She was not a soldier, but she contributed in her own way. She also watched. She watched the silence, studied their movements, tried to understand them the way Helena had taught her to understand everything. Not through force, but through observation. Not through confrontation, but through patience. And slowly, over months and years, she began to see something that no one else seemed to notice. The silence were not invincible. They were not unstoppable. They had patterns, just like everything else. They had weaknesses. The key was not fighting them the way humanity had always fought its enemies. The key was finding another way. Maya was 29 when she finally understood. She was alone on a small observation post on the edge of the Vega system, watching a silence fleet move through the darkness. When the pieces clicked into place, she knew how to stop them. She just had to convince someone to listen. Getting anyone to listen was harder than understanding the solution. Maya was nobody. She had no rank, no credentials, no academy training. She was a free trader engineer from a mining station, and the military did not take advice from people like her. She sent messages through official channels and received no response. She tried to contact officers she had helped during her smuggling runs, and found most of them dead or missing. She even attempted to present her theory at a civilian forum on war strategy, and was politely but firmly removed from the premises. Helena Cross watched her struggle for weeks before finally sitting her down. "You are going about this wrong," Helena said. "I am going about it the only way I can," Maya replied. "The military has to implement this. No one else has the resources. The military will not listen to you. They cannot." Admitting that a civilian with no training might have solved what their best minds could not, would undermine their entire structure. Helena leaned forward. "You need to show them, not tell them. Show them how. I do not have a fleet. I do not have weapons. I have a theory. Helena smiled, the same sharp smile that Maya had first seen in her parents' repair shop 12 years ago. Then we find a way to test your theory. We prove it works on a small scale, and then we make sure the right people see the results. It took another year to set everything up. Maya needed specific equipment, specific conditions, a specific location. She needed to be in exactly the right place when a silence ship appeared. The odds of success were minimal. The odds of survival were worse. But Maya had spent her whole life proving that odds did not matter. She had been rejected by the academy and built a career that took her further than most graduates would ever go. She had survived pirates and plagues and the void of space. She was not going to stop now. The test happened in an empty system on the edge of human space, at a location where Maya's calculations predicted a silent scouting vessel would appear. The wandering star waited in the shadow of a dead moon, its systems powered down to avoid detection, while Maya sat at her modified console and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The silence ship arrived exactly when and where she predicted. Maya activated her device, and for the first time in 5 years of war, a silence ship stopped. It hung motionless in the darkness, its weapons silent, its engines dead. It stayed that way for 17 minutes before slowly turning and retreating into the void. Maya sat back in her chair and let out a breath she had been holding for what felt like years. "It worked," she whispered. "It actually worked." Helena Cross put a hand on her shoulder. "Now comes the hard part. Now we have to make them believe." The recording from the wandering star spread through unofficial channels like fire through dry grass. Helena Cross had contacts everywhere. People she had helped over 30 years of free trading. People who owed her favors or simply trusted her word. Within a week, copies of the footage showing the silent ship stopping and retreating had reached every major system in human space. The official military response was immediate and dismissive. They called it a hoax, a fabrication designed to spread false hope. They pointed out that Maya Chen had no credentials, no training, no authority to be conducting experiments in a war zone. They demanded that she surrender herself for questioning and turn over all her equipment and research. Maya ignored them. She was already working on the next phase. The unofficial response was very different. Commanders on the front lines, officers who had watched their friends die and their fleets crumble, began reaching out through back channels. They wanted to know more. They wanted to understand. They were desperate enough to listen to anyone who might have answers, even a repair shop girl from a mining station who had never set foot in the academy. One name kept appearing in these communications: Admiral Sarah Okonkwo, commander of the Third Fleet, one of the most decorated officers in human history. She had led the defense of the Sol system when the Silence first approached Earth's home and had been fighting on the front lines ever since. Her fleet had been reduced from 200 ships to 47, but she was still fighting. She was also, according to Helena's sources, asking questions about the mysterious footage. Maya sent her a message. It was simple and direct. She explained her theory in terms any officer could understand, included the data from her experiment, and offered to demonstrate her technology in person. She did not ask for permission or approval. She simply stated what she could do and asked if the Admiral was interested. The response came 3 days later, routed through so many encrypted channels that even Helena could not trace its origin. It contained only coordinates and a time. The wandering star jumped to those coordinates and found the battered remnants of the Third Fleet waiting in the darkness between stars. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo was smaller than Maya expected. The broadcasts always made her look larger than life, a towering figure in her pristine uniform, commanding fleets with a wave of her hand. In person, she was a compact woman in her 60s with gray-streaked hair and tired eyes that seemed to have seen too much death. She met Maya in the hangar bay of her flagship, the INS Defiance, surrounded by Marines who looked ready to shoot at the slightest provocation. The Admiral studied Maya for a long moment, taking in her worn clothes and calloused hands, the way she stood without military bearing, the complete absence of anything that suggested authority or importance. "You are not what I expected," the Admiral said finally. "I rarely am," Maya replied. "Would you like to see what I can do? Or would you prefer to discuss my credentials first?" Something flickered in the Admiral's eyes. It might have been amusement. "Show me." Maya had brought a portable version of her device, small enough to fit in a case she could carry herself. She set it up in an empty cargo hold while the Admiral watched, explaining as she worked. The silence communicate through a specific frequency range that human sensors cannot normally detect. Their ships, their weapons, their navigation systems, everything runs on signals transmitted within this range. My device generates interference on these frequencies, essentially creating noise that disrupts their communications. If it was that simple, our scientists would have discovered it years ago, the Admiral said. It is not simple at all. The frequency range shifts constantly according to patterns that took me years to decode. The interference has to shift with it, anticipating the changes rather than reacting to them. That requires understanding how the silence think, how they process information, how they make decisions. Maya finished her setup and stepped back. I spent 7 years studying them, not fighting them, studying them. That is why I found what your scientists missed. The Admiral was silent for a moment. You truly believe you can stop them? I know I can stop them, one ship at a time, for limited periods. What I cannot do is manufacture enough devices to affect an entire fleet, or train enough operators to use them effectively, or coordinate a large-scale deployment. For that, I need resources I do not have. Resources only the military can provide. Yes, Admiral Okonkwo crossed her arms. And in exchange? No exchange. No conditions. I want to end this war. I want humanity to survive. That is all I have ever wanted. Maya met the Admiral's eyes steadily. I am not interested in glory or recognition or revenge against the Academy that rejected me. I am interested in stopping the silence before they erase everything we have built. The Admiral studied her for another long moment, and Maya had the sense that she was being weighed, measured against some internal standard that had nothing to do with rank or credentials. Show me, the Admiral said again. Show me it works on one of their actual ships. The demonstration took place 3 days later, at a location where Okonkwo's scouts had detected silence activity. Maya was transferred to the Defiance's command center, surrounded by officers who watched her with a mixture of skepticism and desperate hope. A single silence vessel appeared on sensors, exactly as predicted. It was a scout ship, smaller than their warships but still capable of destroying half the remaining fleet. The officers tensed, hands moving toward weapons controls. Hold, Admiral Okonkwo commanded. Let her work. Maya activated her device. The effect was immediate. The silence ship's forward momentum slowed, then stopped. Its weapons systems, which had been charging for an attack run, went dark. It hung in space like a puppet with cut strings. Move in, Maya said quietly. While it is disrupted, your weapons should work normally. The Admiral gave the order. 3 ships from the Third Fleet closed on the paralyzed silence vessel. Their weapons fired, and for the first time anyone could remember, every shot hit its target. The silence ship broke apart in a bloom of silent fire. A sound went through the command center that Maya had never heard before. It took her a moment to recognize it as cheering. Admiral Okonkwo turned to her, and now there was something new in those tired eyes. It was not hope exactly. It was more like recognition. How quickly can you train others to use this technology? That depends on how quickly you can provide me with the resources I need. The Admiral nodded slowly. Consider them provided. The next 2 years were the hardest of Maya's life. She had proven her technology worked, but proving and implementing were very different things. The military bureaucracy resisted her at every turn, not because they doubted her results, but because her success represented a fundamental challenge to everything they believed. The Academy trained officers to fight. They learned strategy and tactics, weapon systems and fleet maneuvers. They learned to be warriors, to meet the enemy in battle and destroy them through superior force. Maya's approach required none of that. It required patience, observation, understanding. It required treating the enemy not as an obstacle to be overcome, but as a puzzle to be solved. Many officers could not make that mental shift. They had spent their entire careers learning to fight, and asking them to stop fighting felt like asking them to stop breathing. They resisted Maya's training programs, questioned her methods, complained to their superiors that she was undermining military discipline. Maya persisted anyway. She found allies where she could, officers like Admiral Okonkwo who were pragmatic enough to embrace anything that might end the war. She trained small teams of specialists who could operate her devices effectively, people who thought differently from typical military personnel. She recruited scientists and engineers, artists and musicians, anyone who approached problems from unusual angles. Slowly, painfully, her network grew. The silence kept coming during this time, of course. They did not wait while humanity prepared its new weapons. Systems fell, populations vanished, the war ground on. But now, for the first time, the losses were not entirely one-sided. Ships equipped with Maya's technology scored victories that would have been impossible before. Planets that should have been lost were defended. The tide had not turned, but it had begun to slow. Maya was 33 when the Silence attacked Earth directly. The assault on humanity's homeworld was the largest military operation the Silence had ever undertaken. Over 500 of their ships emerged from nowhere, surrounding the Sol system in a sphere of death that seemed impossible to breach. Every defense grid, every orbital platform, every ship in the home fleet engaged them simultaneously. And it was not enough. Maya was aboard the Defiance when the attack began, coordinating the deployment of her disruption devices across what remained of the human fleet. She watched the battle unfold on the tactical displays and felt her heart sink. They had too few devices, too few trained operators. The Silence were adapting faster than predicted, finding ways around the interference that should not have been possible. "We are losing," Admiral Okonkwo said quietly, standing beside her. Maya did not respond. She was staring at the display, watching the patterns of Silence movement, the way their ships coordinated despite the disruption. Something was different about this attack, something she had not seen before. "They have a central node," she said suddenly, "a command ship coordinating all the others. If we can find it and disable it, the entire fleet should become vulnerable." "How do you find a command ship among 500 vessels?" Maya was already working, her fingers flying across the console, pulling data from every source she could access. The patterns were there, hidden in the chaos of battle. She just had to find them. "There," she said finally, highlighting a single ship near the rear of the Silence formation. It looked no different from the others, but the data told a different story. Every other ship's movements correlated with this one. It was the conductor, and all the rest were instruments playing its tune. Admiral Okonkwo looked at the display, then at Maya. "That is deep behind their lines. Getting to it would be suicide. Then we send a suicide mission. Who would volunteer for that?" Maya straightened up from the console and met the Admiral's eyes. "I would." The Wandering Star was still docked in the Defiance's hangar bay. Helena Cross had refused to leave Maya's side throughout the war, even when remaining put her ship and crew at constant risk. She was waiting in the pilot's chair when Maya arrived, as if she had known this moment would come. "You are going after the command ship," Helena said. It was not a question. "Yes. The odds of surviving are essentially zero." "Yes." Helena nodded slowly. "Then we go together." Maya started to argue, to insist that Helena and the crew evacuate to safety. But the words died in her throat. She had learned many things from Helena Cross over the years, and one of them was when argument was pointless. "Together," she agreed. The Wandering Star launched into the maelstrom of battle, its engines pushed beyond any safe limit, its hull shuddering under the strain. Maya sat at her console, the disruption device active, creating a corridor of confusion through the Silence formation. Ships that should have turned to destroy them hesitated. Their targeting systems scrambled. Their coordination disrupted. It was not enough to protect them completely. The Wandering Star took hit after hit, systems failing, hull breaching. Helena flew with the skill of 30 years' experience, dodging and weaving through the chaos, keeping them alive through sheer force of will. They were still alive when they reached the command ship. "Now what?" Helena asked, blood running down her face from a cut above her eye. Maya looked at her console. The disruption device was damaged, barely functional. The ship was falling apart around them. They had perhaps 5 minutes of power remaining. "Ram them," Maya said. "That will destroy us. It will also destroy them. The disruption effect will cascade through their entire network. Every ship in their fleet will be vulnerable." Helena was silent for a moment. Then she laughed. The same sharp bark of sound Maya remembered from their first meeting. "I always knew you would change the galaxy," Helena said. "I just thought I would live to see what came next." "I am sorry," Maya whispered. "Do not be. This is a good death. A meaningful death." Helena took her hand. "It was an honor, Maya Chen." The Wandering Star accelerated toward the Silence command ship, its engines screaming, its structure groaning. Every system pushed far past any limit. The explosion was visible from Earth. The Silence Fleet, 500 ships poised to destroy humanity's home, stopped as one. Their weapons went dark. Their engines fell silent. They hung in space like leaves frozen in autumn, waiting to fall. And then, the human fleet, battered and broken but still fighting, tore them apart. The Battle of Seoul lasted another 12 hours, but its outcome was decided in the moment the Wandering Star made contact with the Silence command ship. Without coordination, without their network, the Silence were vulnerable in ways they had never been before. Ship after ship was destroyed. Their technology suddenly comprehensible. Their tactics suddenly predictable. By the time it was over, not a single Silence vessel remained in the Sol system. Maya Chen was listed among the dead. Her body was never recovered from the debris field where the Wandering Star had made its final sacrifice. Admiral Okonkwo filed a report recommending her for humanity's highest military honors, which was denied on the grounds that Maya had never held any official rank or position. The war was not over. The Silence had other fleets, other command ships, and they were still a threat to human civilization. But the technology Maya had developed lived on after her, spreading to every corner of human space. Her training programs produced thousands of operators who understood the Silence in ways no military strategist ever had. Her methods became standard procedure. Her insights the foundation of a new approach to the conflict. Within 5 years, the tide of war had definitively turned. Within 10, the Silence had retreated beyond explored space. Their expansion checked. Their threat contained if not eliminated. Maya Chen's name was rarely mentioned in the official histories. The Academy graduates who led the fleets received the medals and the monuments. The admirals and generals wrote the memoirs and attended the ceremonies. The military took credit for developing the technology that saved humanity, and few questioned the narrative. But among the free traders who traveled the spaces between stars, among the refugees who had been saved by the Wandering Star's mercy runs, among the scientists and engineers and unusual thinkers who had been recruited into Maya's training programs, her name was remembered. It was passed down from ship to ship, station to station, generation to generation. They called her the woman who saved Earth, the girl from the mining station who found another way, the engineer who studied an enemy when everyone else was trying to destroy them, and in doing so, discovered the key to victory. She never entered the academy, but legends rose around her name. 60 years had passed since the Battle of Seoul. The galaxy had changed in ways that would have seemed impossible to those who lived through the war. Humanity had not merely survived the Silence, it had been transformed by them. The old military structures, the academy, the rigid hierarchies that had almost doomed human civilization, had been reformed from the ground up. New institutions emphasized the lessons Maya Chen had taught. Though most of those who studied in them did not know her name, they learned to observe before acting, to understand before attacking, to see enemies as problems to be solved rather than obstacles to be destroyed. It was not a perfect system, but it was better than what had come before. Among the free traders and the outer ring communities, Maya's story had grown with each retelling. Some versions claimed she had survived the destruction of the Wandering Star, that she lived still in some hidden corner of the galaxy, watching over humanity like a guardian angel. Others said she had never existed at all, that she was a symbol, created by the resistance to inspire hope during the darkest days of the war. A few, those who had actually known her or studied the records carefully, kept the truth alive as best they could. One of those people was a young woman named Zara Lin. Zara was 19 years old, born on Station Kepler 7, the same mining station where Maya had grown up. She worked in a repair shop that had been in her family for 4 generations, fixing mining equipment for workers who lived on the outer ring. She had applied to the academy 3 times and been rejected 3 times. Her scores high enough, but her connections insufficient. She had also spent the last 5 years researching everything she could find about Maya Chen. It had started as a school project, an assignment to write about a historical figure from her home station. Most of her classmates chose miners who had made fortunes or administrators who had risen to prominence. Zara chose the girl who had been rejected by the academy and went on to save the human race. The more she researched, the more obsessed she became. She tracked down old records, interviewed aging free traders who had served on ships during the war, accessed archives that required permissions she technically did not have. Piece by piece, she assembled a picture of who Maya Chen had truly been. Not the mythical figure of legend, but the real person behind the stories. What she found changed everything she thought she knew about the war, about the academy, about her own future. The academy had not rejected Maya Chen because her scores were too low or her qualifications insufficient. Zara discovered this in an archive buried deep in the military's historical records, a file that had been classified for decades and then forgotten when the war ended. Maya Chen's application scores had been among the highest of her year. Her practical examinations had impressed evaluators who rarely awarded top marks to anyone, much less applicants from outer ring stations. She had demonstrated abilities in engineering, tactical analysis, and problem-solving that placed her in the top 1% of all applicants across 12 star systems. She had been rejected because of a psychological evaluation. The evaluator, a military psychologist named Dr. Thomas Webb, had flagged Maya as unsuitable for academy training. His notes, preserved in the archive, were revealing. He wrote that Maya showed dangerous tendencies toward independent thinking, that she questioned established procedures rather than accepting them, that she approached problems in ways that did not conform to academy standards. In short, she thought differently. And the academy did not want people who thought differently. Dr. Webb concluded his evaluation with a recommendation that Maya Chen never be admitted to any military institution. He described her as a potential disruptive influence who might undermine discipline and challenge authority. He suggested that she would be better suited to civilian technical work, where her unusual abilities could be employed without damaging military structure. Zara read these notes 3 times, her hands shaking with anger. The academy had rejected Maya Chen specifically because she was the kind of person who might have saved humanity sooner. They had looked at her unique perspective, her creative problem-solving, her willingness to question assumptions, and they had seen not potential but threat. And then, when their traditional methods had failed and humanity had faced extinction, Maya Chen had done exactly what Dr. Webb had feared she would do. She had thought differently. She had challenged established procedures. She had approached the problem in ways that did not conform to academy standards. And she had won. Zara's research attracted attention she had not anticipated. A woman visited the repair shop one afternoon, older than Zara's grandmother, with silver hair and a face weathered by decades of space travel. She introduced herself only as a historian interested in war-era records and asked Zara about her project. "How did you access the Webb psychological evaluation?" the woman asked. "That file was supposed to be permanently sealed. I found a reference to it in a free trader's journal from the war period," Zara said. The trader had heard about it from someone who served on the Defiance. "Once I knew it existed, I kept looking until I found a way in." The woman smiled slightly. That is exactly what she would have done. Who? Maya Chen. When she wanted to understand the silence, she did not wait for someone to give her permission or access. She found information however she could, assembled the pieces herself, drew her own conclusions. The woman sat down across from Zara. "You remind me of her. You knew her?" "I served under her for 2 years. I was one of the operators she trained, one of the unusual thinkers she recruited into her program." The woman's eyes grew distant. "She saved my life 3 times, once by evacuating my station before the silence arrived, once by teaching me how to disable a silence ship that was about to destroy my shuttle, and once by making the sacrifice that ended the Battle of Seoul." Zara leaned forward intently. The official histories barely mention her. When they do, they call her an unnamed civilian consultant. Why? Because admitting the truth would mean admitting that the academy, the military, all the institutions that claimed credit for winning the war, had almost lost it through their own arrogance. The woman shook her head slowly. They could not acknowledge that a rejected applicant, a repair shop girl from a mining station, had seen what all their trained experts had missed. It would have undermined their entire foundation. That is not right. No, it is not. The woman reached into her bag and pulled out a small data chip. "I have spent the last 40 years collecting everything I could about Maya Chen. Recordings, documents, personal accounts from people who knew her. I have been waiting to find someone worthy of receiving it." Zara stared at the chip. "Why me?" "Because you found what I could not. That psychological evaluation proves what many of us have believed for decades. that Maya was rejected not despite her abilities but because of them. It changes the entire narrative of the war. The woman pressed the chip into Zara's hand. She deserves to be remembered properly. She deserves to have her story told. The data on the chip was more extensive than Zara could have imagined. It contained thousands of hours of recordings, including footage from the Wandering Star's final mission that had never been released to the public. It contained personal journals from Helena Cross, recovered from a backup system on a station where the Wandering Star had docked shortly before the Battle of Seoul. It contained interviews with dozens of people who had known Maya, worked with her, been saved by her. It also contained something Zara had not expected. Maya Chen had not died in the Battle of Seoul. The evidence was fragmentary but compelling. Debris analysis from the explosion showed that a small escape pod had been launched from the Wandering Star milliseconds before impact. The pod's trajectory placed it on a course toward the outer planets, away from the battle, into a region of space that had not been searched during the post-battle recovery operations. Helena Cross had saved her. More evidence followed. A medical facility on Titan reported treating a severely injured woman matching Maya's description in the weeks after the battle. The woman had given no name and disappeared before she could be properly identified. Sightings over the following decades, scattered across the outer systems, suggested that someone resembling Maya Chen had continued working in the shadows, helping refugees, supporting resistance movements, advancing the technology she had developed. None of it was conclusive. Maya had never confirmed her survival to anyone, had never sought recognition or credit. If she had lived, she had chosen to remain hidden, to let the galaxy believe she had died a hero's death. Zara understood why. The military would have claimed her, tried to control her, turned her into a symbol to serve their own purposes. By remaining dead, Maya had remained free. She had been able to continue her work without interference, without the burden of fame and expectation. It was exactly what she would have done. Zara spent the next 3 years writing Maya's story. She worked on it in her spare time, after shifts at the repair shop, during the long quiet hours of station night when everyone else was sleeping. She wrote not just about Maya's role in the war but about who she had been before, the rejection that had defined her, the choices that had led her to become something the Academy had never imagined. She also wrote about what Maya's story meant for the future. The Academy still existed, reformed but still privileging certain types of minds over others. Brilliant applicants were still rejected because they thought differently, because they questioned assumptions, because they did not fit the established patterns. Maya's story was not just history. It was a warning and a promise. The book was published on the 60th anniversary of the Battle of Seoul. Zara had expected it to sell a few thousand copies, to find an audience among free traders and outer ring communities who already knew pieces of the legend. It became the most widely read book in human space within a year. Something in Maya's story resonated with people across the galaxy. The refugees who had been saved by free traders during the war recognized themselves in her journey. The Academy graduates who had watched their classmates die while traditional tactics failed understood what her methods had meant. The young people who had been rejected by institutions that did not value their way of thinking saw in Maya a reflection of their own struggles. Letters poured in from every corner of human civilization. People shared their own stories of rejection and perseverance, of finding another way when the obvious paths were closed. They wrote about how Maya's example had inspired them to keep trying, to believe that their different perspectives might be valuable rather than wrong. The Academy sent a formal response as well. After 60 years of denying Maya Chen any recognition, they announced that she would be posthumously inducted into their Hall of Heroes. They claimed that her methods had always been aligned with Academy principles, that her contributions had been recognized from the beginning. Zara considered refusing to acknowledge the gesture. It felt like too little, too late, a transparent attempt to co-opt a story that embarrassed them. But then she remembered something Helena Cross had written in her journal, an entry from the night before the Battle of Seoul. Maya never cared about recognition, Helena wrote. She cared about results. She wanted humanity to survive, to learn, to become something better. If her story can help that happen, she would accept whatever form it took. Zara attended the induction ceremony. She stood in the Academy's Grand Hall, surrounded by admirals and senators and graduates who had never known Maya Chen, and she spoke about who Maya had really been. Not the legend, not the myth, but the woman. The repair shop girl, who had found another way, She ended her speech with words that would be carved into monuments across human space. Maya Chen was rejected by this academy because she thought differently. She was told that her mind did not fit their patterns, that her methods did not match their standards. She could have accepted that judgment. She could have spent her life fixing mining equipment, doing honest work, helping people on a small scale. There would have been no shame in that. Instead, she chose to prove that different is not wrong. Different is necessary. Different is what saves us when everything we thought we knew stops working. She never entered the academy, but she taught the academy, taught all of us. The most important lesson we have ever learned. The greatest threats humanity will face cannot be defeated by doing things the same way we have always done them. They can only be defeated by people who think differently, who question assumptions, who find paths that no one else can see. Those people are being rejected right now by institutions all over human space. They are being told that their minds do not fit, that their methods are wrong, that they should accept their limitations and find quiet work in repair shops and cargo holds. Some of them will accept that judgment, some of them will not. And someday, one of them will save us again. The memorial was built on Station Kepler 7, in the outer ring where Maya had grown up. It was not a grand monument like the ones on Earth or Mars. It was a simple structure, a small garden surrounding a single stone with her name and the years of her life, which remained uncertain because no one knew for sure when or if she had died. Zara visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the Battle of Seoul. She would sit on a bench overlooking the garden and think about everything that had happened since she first started researching Maya's story. Her book had changed things. The academy had reformed its admission procedures to value different types of thinking. New institutions had been founded that specifically recruited people who did not fit traditional patterns. The lessons Maya had taught were being passed down to new generations. It was not enough. It was never enough. But it was better than before. On the 20th anniversary of her book's publication, Zara was sitting on her bench when an old woman approached. She was ancient, stooped with age, her face a map of wrinkles and scars. She moved slowly, each step deliberate, and she sat down beside Zara with a sigh of relief. "You wrote about me," the old woman said. Zara's heart stopped. "I am not looking for recognition," the woman continued, her voice quiet but clear. "I stayed hidden, because that was the only way to keep working. But I wanted to thank you. You told my story better than I could have told it myself." "You are alive," Zara whispered. "All these years, you were alive. Helena saved me. She always was better at thinking ahead than I was." The woman who might have been Maya Chen looked out over the memorial garden. "I kept working after the war. There are always problems that need solving, always enemies that need understanding, always rejected minds that need encouragement. I could not save everyone, but I saved some. Why reveal yourself now? Because I am dying. The real death this time, not the convenient one that let me disappear." The old woman smiled slightly. "And because I wanted to meet you. You remind me of someone I used to know, a girl from a repair shop who thought she could change the galaxy." Zara found that she was crying. She did not know why. Perhaps because everything she had believed about Maya Chen was true. Perhaps because the woman who had saved humanity had spent 60 years hidden and alone, helping from the shadows because she knew that was where she could do the most good. Perhaps because even legends had to die eventually. "What should I do now?" Zara asked. "You've given me so much. Your story, your example. What do you want me to do with it?" The old woman reached out and took her hand. Her grip was weak, but her eyes were sharp. "Find the ones who think differently. The ones who have been rejected, who have been told they do not fit. Find them and tell them that different is not wrong. Different is necessary. Different is what saves us." "I will. And remember," the old woman said, her voice fading, "the academy never taught me anything important. Everything I learned by doing, by failing, by finding another way. That is how we all learn in the end. Not by following patterns someone else created, but by creating our own." She died 3 days later, in a small room overlooking the garden where her memorial stood. Zara was with her at the end. So were dozens of others. People from across the galaxy who had heard that Maya Chen was finally allowing herself to be found. People whose lives she had touched over 9 decades of service. They buried her beside Helena Cross, in a cemetery on a moon orbiting a gas giant. far from Earth and the Academy, and everything Maya had never been part of. The grave marker was simple, just their names and a single phrase carved into the stone. They found another way. 100 years after the Battle of Seoul, the Academy finally released all their records from the war period. Among them was a complete file on Maya Chen, including Dr. Webb's psychological evaluation and all the correspondence that had followed. The documents were made available to the public, and historians descended on them like archaeologists discovering a lost civilization. What they found confirmed everything Zara had written and more. Maya had been identified as exceptional from her first application. Multiple evaluators had argued for her admission. The decision to reject her had been made over their objections, based solely on Dr. Webb's assessment that she thought differently from Academy standards. Dr. Webb had died 20 years after the war, having never acknowledged his role in almost dooming humanity. His descendants released a statement expressing regret for his actions and donated a substantial sum to establish a scholarship in Maya's name, funding the academy education of students from outer ring communities who demonstrated unconventional thinking. Zara lived long enough to see the first class of Maya Chen scholars graduate from the academy. They went on to careers that took them across the galaxy, solving problems that conventional thinkers could not solve, finding paths that conventional minds could not see. They were Maya's true legacy, more than any memorial or history book. Some of them went on to face challenges that threatened human civilization again, because such challenges never truly end. They brought to those challenges the lessons Maya had taught: the ability to observe before acting, to understand before attacking, to see enemies as problems to be solved rather than obstacles to be destroyed. And when people asked where they had learned to think that way, they told the story of Maya Chen, the girl from the mining station who had been rejected by the academy, who had found another way, who had saved humanity not through strength or strategy but through understanding. She never entered the academy, but legends rose around her name, and those legends changed the course of human history. In the end, that was exactly what she would have wanted.